The sound of laughter echoed across the sleek glass walls of the top-floor boardroom. The kind of laughter that wasn't born from joy but from arrogance, heavy with condescension. In the middle of the room, billionaire tech magnate Richard Hale, founder of Hale Technologies, stood tall in his charcoal suit. He held up a thick document stamped with an embossed Chinese seal. His voice carried over the polished table as he announced, "Whoever can translate this proposal accurately in 48 hours gets my salary for a day, $30,000. Gasps filled the room. Jokes followed. One executive smirked. Another leaned back in his leather chair with a mocking grin. "Maybe we should just throw it into Google Translate," quipped Mark Ellison, the vice president of operations. His gold Harvard ring clinked against a water glass as he chuckled. The others joined in, their laughter bouncing across the room. Behind them, moving silently with a cloth in hand, Elena Cruz polished the mahogany table. Her uniform was plain, her head bowed low. But inside, her mind burned. She was fluent in Mandarin. Not just fluent, masterful. Yet here she stood, cloth in hand, ignored like a shadow. The executives saw only a maid, a cleaning girl who pushed her cart through their offices unseen. They never guessed that she carried inside her the knowledge of 3 languages, the memory of a brilliant father, and a heritage of resilience carved by hardship. Richard Hale nudged Elena's cart aside with his polished Italian shoe. "Even the cleaning staff could try," he said, smirking, "though I doubt they teach Mandarin in janitorial school." More laughter erupted. Elena kept her eyes down, but her hands trembled slightly against the wood. Not from shame, from fury. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't need to look. She knew what it was, a reminder. 72 hours until her eviction hearing. 3 days until she and her mother would lose the only home they had left. The amount she needed to survive, 30,000. Almost. Exactly the number Richard Hale had tossed into the air like a party favor. She clenched her fist around the pen in her pocket. A small jade translator's pen, carved with delicate Chinese characters. Her father's final gift. It was more than a pen. It was a lifeline, a reminder of the brilliance he had passed to her, and the injustice that had stolen him away. The weight of the moment pressed down. She could reveal herself now. But what would that mean? If she failed, she would be humiliated and fired. If she succeeded, she might still be punished for daring to rise above her station. Yet without action, her future was already sealed by an eviction notice and hospital bills that grew heavier by the day. The choice hung in the air like a storm cloud waiting to break. Elena slipped silently from the room before her face betrayed her secret. But her mind was already spinning. She hadn't always been invisible. Years ago, she had been a child filled with light. At 8 years old, Elena had dazzled her teachers by switching fluently between Spanish, Mandarin, and English. Her Chinese mother, Li Mei, had met her Dominican father, Carlos Cruz, during an international student exchange in Boston. Their love had bridged cultures, languages, and worlds. Carlos would say to Elena, "Words build bridges, mija, bridges strong enough to cross any divide." At 10 years old, Elena could translate between her Chinese grandparents and Dominican relatives at family gatherings. Proud smiles from both sides of her family had made her beam. For her 13th birthday, her father had given her the jade pen. Its cool surface carried the faint smell of sandalwood, a token from his study where they had spent countless nights reading texts in multiple languages. Carved into the pen were the words, "Knowledge gives light." But 3 months later, everything changed. Carlos Cruz, after 15 loyal years working in Hale Technologies' Asian market division, was laid off during a strategic restructuring. The severance barely covered 2 months of rent. His health insurance disappeared overnight. When the cough in his chest turned into stage 4 lung cancer, the medical bills came faster than rejection letters from the jobs he desperately applied. For Elena remembered the night her father came home from yet another interview. Shoulders sagging, eyes hollow. "They won't hire me," he whispered to her mother. "Hale has shut every door. They call it protecting proprietary knowledge. I call it a blacklist." 6 months later, Carlos was gone. What he left behind was $40,000 in debt, a grieving wife, a teenage daughter forced to abandon her dream of college, and a jade pen Elena now carried everywhere. Her mother worked 3 cleaning jobs despite holding an engineering degree from Beijing University. Elena worked nights scrubbing offices, while secretly taking translation jobs online under the alias Linguistic Bridge. Together they survived barely. Rent, medication, groceries, utilities. The cruel math of survival devoured everything else. For 5 years, Elena drifted through the gleaming halls of Hale Technologies like a ghost. She emptied trash bins, polished award cases, and scrubbed coffee rings while absorbing every conversation executives tossed carelessly into the air. They spoke of billion-dollar deals, global expansions, diversity initiatives that were more performance than truth. She knew things they never imagined the help could understand. And now, here she stood, a maid in their eyes, a translator. In truth, her father's voice echoed inside her. Words build bridges. But could words save her from ruin? Could they lift her mother from sickness, shield them from eviction, and turn humiliation into triumph? The clock had already begun its countdown. 72 hours. 3 days to change everything. Friday morning arrived with unusual tension on the executive floor. At exactly 10:15 a.m., Elena noticed Richard Hale receive a courier envelope stamped with the seal of Huaxin Microsystems, one of the largest semiconductor manufacturers in Shanghai. She was polishing the glass trophy case when she caught the flicker of panic cross his otherwise stone-faced expression. He quickly tucked the envelope under his arm, but by noon, the entire top floor was in chaos. Meeting alerts pinged across every executive's screen. Analysts were rushing with files. Assistants whispered in corners. Phones rang with unusual urgency. Elena moved through it all quietly, emptying bins and wiping surfaces, while every nerve in her body listened. Midday, the news was out. The head translator, Mr. Lin, was overseas visiting family. His associates were at a conference in Tokyo. The language team was completely unavailable, and the document was written entirely in Mandarin. Elena recognized several characters even, from the cover page, technical terms her father had taught her years ago. The proposal was about processor manufacturing tolerances, the kind of specifications Carlos Cruz had once overseen with precision. Richard Hale stormed into the boardroom. At noon sharp, his tie slightly askew, face taut with frustration. He slapped the document onto the table. Huaxin is offering us exclusive rights to manufacture their new processors. If we win this contract, our market share in Asia doubles. If we lose it, Samsung takes it. We have 72 hours to respond. Executives gasped, muttered, and speculated, but Hale raised his hand. There's a problem. They sent the entire proposal in Mandarin, and our translation team is gone. Silence fell. One junior manager suggested using a service. Hale snapped, Do you want our competitors reading confidential technology before we even sign the deal? His voice cut like a blade. Then, as if on cue, his gaze slid toward Elena, who was quietly cleaning the credenza by the wall. Translate this in 48 hours, and my daily salary is yours. $30,000. Anyone in this room? Anyone. He let the words hang. His smirk sharpened. Even the cleaning lady if she wants to try, though I doubt she can tell the difference between Mandarin and Cantonese. The executives chuckled nervously, more cruel than amused. Mark Ellison leaned forward and said, We can split it as a team. Use machine translation for a first pass, then refine it together. Fine, Hale barked, but these documents don't leave this building. Full security protocols. 72 hours until Huaxin walks. The men grabbed photocopies of the proposal, muttering over the first page. Elena, still polishing, watched their mistakes unfold in real time. They mistranslated the title itself, calling it a partnership opportunity when it clearly said exclusive manufacturing contract. Her stomach tightened. They were butchering the document, and they didn't even know it. But she knew. She saw every character clearly, and the deadline, 72 hours, was the exact same countdown she faced for her eviction hearing. $30,000 could mean survival, medical care for her mother, dignity after years of scraping by. But what if the document contained poison? What if the same company that had ruined her father's career was about to profit again, and she would be the one who handed them the blade? The weight of choice pressed against her like a stone. That night at 1:45 a.m., in the cramped kitchenette of their one-bedroom apartment, Elena spread papers across the table. Her mother slept in the living room, medical monitors beeping softly in the shadows. The eviction notice lay beside her notes, the number 72 circled in red ink. She couldn't reveal herself outright. Not yet. Too dangerous. But perhaps she could test the waters, show just enough skill to prove her value, without giving everything away. Saturday night, she returned to Hale Technologies. The security guard barely glanced at her. "Overtime again?" he asked. "Yes," Elena replied in accented English, exaggerating her voice to fit the role they expected. "My mama need medicine." He nodded with sympathy and waved her through. The executive floor was empty, the boardroom silent, but the whiteboard was covered with scrawled translations from the executives, technical terms mangled beyond recognition, business phrases warped into nonsense. Elena winced at the mess. She took out her jade pen. Carefully, she corrected 3 critical sections. No more, no less. She translated the technical terminology with precision her father would have been proud of. Then she signed it with 2 simple words. Night Owl. It wasn't enough to solve the whole puzzle. Just enough to prove someone knew the truth. Sunday morning, the ripple began. Elena lingered near the boardroom door with her cart as Richard Hale entered with his team. He froze at the whiteboard. The corrections were clear, sharp, and undeniably accurate. "Who the hell is Night Owl?" Hale demanded. Security insisted no one unauthorized had entered the building. "It must be someone on our team," Mark Ellison offered quickly, studying the board with narrowed eyes. Then smoothly he erased the signature and turned back to Hale. "Actually, I did this part. Been studying Mandarin privately. Didn't want to make a big deal of it until now." Hale clapped him on the shoulder. "Finally, some initiative around here. You're in charge of this project now." Elena's small victory turned to ash in her throat. Mark Ellison had stolen her work, and yet she had no choice but to keep going. 56 hours remained until eviction. 47 until Huaxin's deadline. The race had only just begun. Sunday night turned into Monday before Elena noticed the sky had shifted. She had filled a notebook with careful lines and small characters. Her mother slept in the next room with the soft beep of a monitor. Bills covered, the corner of the table like a tide that would not recede. She reached a section of the Huaxin proposal labeled with a bland phrase, "Workforce Realignment." The words looked harmless. The details did not. The clause allowed Hale Technologies to cut 320 jobs at the plant outside Newark in exchange for a lower per-unit cost. The numbers were tidy and cold. The deadline was fast. The impact would devastate families who had only just found stability. Elena set the pen down and closed. Her cousin's family worked at that plant. So did 3 neighbors from her building. The choice struck like a hammer. Translate and help a deal that might push people into hunger. Refuse and watch eviction officers change the locks on her. She wrote one clear sentence in the margin. Numbers are not the same as lives. Her phone buzzed with a message from her supervisor. New cameras installed on the executive floor. All cleaning must finish by 7 in the evening until further notice. Access will be limited after that. The small window she had used to leave Night Owl notes was closing on Monday morning. The executive wing hummed with a new kind of pressure. Security badges were checked twice. The guard at the desk nodded to Elena, yet watched her cart roll past with more care than before. Elena hid in quiet corners during her breaks. In a bathroom stall, with steady light. In the supply closet with the smell of fresh paper and lemon cleaner. She translated on scraps and folded sheets in the back of old shift lists. She worked through lunch. She worked instead of resting. By evening, she had finished 40% of the document by hand. She left a second small set of Night Owl corrections on the whiteboard, Precise, limited. Undeniable. Mark Ellison arrived early and read them in silence. His face did not change. He erased the signature with one smooth move and claimed the work again. Confidence settled on him like a new coat. The clock did not slow. 56 hours until eviction. 47 hours until the Huaxin deadline. On Tuesday morning, the head of security played grainy footage from the new cameras in the meeting. A shadow in the boardroom after hours. No clear face, no badge data. The word breach turned the yeo. Air sharp, investigate everyone. Richard Hale's voice left no room for doubt. They questioned all-night staff. When Elena sat down across from the security chief, she folded her hands and kept her gaze soft. Her English became simple on purpose. She hated that mask. It kept her safe. Clean tables, I empty bins, I do not touch papers. The chief moved on. Mark did not. He waited until the room was empty. His Harvard ring tapped against the desk like a metronome. Funny thing. He said with a quiet smile, "You always follow instructions perfectly. You understand every detail when I talk. Instructions are simple. Questions are hard." Elena answered without looking up. That afternoon, Elena opened her locker and felt her stomach drop. The jade pen was gone, her father's gift. Her anchor, looking for this, Mark stood in the empty break room and spun the pen between two fingers. He tilted it to read the carved characters. Knowledge gives light. Beautiful, unusual. Also not on the approved items list for cleaning staff. He slipped the pen into his jacket. Security will want to review this. Corporate espionage is a concern these days. On Wednesday morning, HR handed Elena a written warning for possession of unauthorized materials and suspicious behavior. The words on the page blurred for a moment. She blinked until they were clear again. She could not afford tears. She could not afford anything but action. 34 hours until eviction. Her mother had spent the night in the emergency room with chest pain. The ambulance copay had drained what was left in their account. The building manager had posted the final notice on their door. 48 hours until the locks would change. During lunch, Elena took a risk. She knew the blind spots in the camera. Network now. She stepped into Mark's empty office while he presented a status update down the hall. She sat at his desk. Her hands did not shake. She opened his recent files. She read he had altered key sections of the proposal he had translated, strict quality demands into loose guidelines. He had turned optional workforce requests into mandatory cuts. He had hidden risks that would draw regulators and trigger fines if the contract went forward. As written, she printed 3 pages. She tucked them into her uniform pocket and locked his screen again. Her pulse pounded as she walked back into the hall with the calm face of a person pushing a cart. Mark was waiting by the service elevator when she returned to her route. No small talk this time, no ring tapping. Just a low voice and a direct stare. "I know it is you." The secret translator. I checked personnel records. Your mother is Li Mei from Shanghai. Your father worked here before he was right-sized. Interesting history. Elena kept her voice steady. My father built your Asia division. He was not right-sized, he was betrayed. Mark smiled without warmth. Give up your little game. Or I speak to the right people about your mother's status. Paperwork can become complicated. Especially for families with debt and gaps in coverage. The threat settled in the space between them like smoke. Elena said nothing. Silence was the only safe answer. 29 hours until eviction. 23 hours until the Huaxin deadline. She faced a wall, with no doors. Speak and risk her mother's safety. Stay silent and let hundreds lose their jobs. Either choice would stain her hands. At 9 in the morning on Thursday, the board gathered for an emergency review. Richard Hale wanted answers before the final call with Huaxin. Elena poured coffee. She set out water. She moved around the room as if she were part of the furniture. Only her eyes betrayed the storm inside. Mark began his presentation with firm, theatric calm. He called the terms favorable. He described rates 15% below market. He claimed minimal quality controls. He spoke the Chinese name of a thermal modeling system and broke every tone. The wrong word cut across Elena's nerves like a siren. She winced. Not a show, a reflex hail. Saw it. He turned his head slowly. Something wrong with the service staff. Or with the words. The room went still. Elena felt her heartbeat in her throat. She lifted her chin. You mispronounced it, she said quietly. And you mistranslated the section. The phrase means fluid modeling system. It describes thermal management in the manufacturing process. It has nothing to do with labor. Every gaze settled on her. Mark's mouth tightened. Hale's eyes narrowed. You read Mandarin? Hale asked. Mandarin Spanish? English, Elena said. I read Japanese and Korean on paper. I speak them less well. She told them her father's name. She told them what he built here. Recognition flickered across Hale's face like a distant light mark tried to cut in. She kept going. She cited page numbers and paragraphs from memory. She explained that the quality protocols were stricter than industry norms. She stated that the workforce language was not only harsh, but likely in conflict with existing labor agreements. Hale asked. One question that mattered. Can you translate the entire document by the deadline? I have completed more than half. I left notes to help. The ones signed, Night Owl. The ones he claimed. She pointed at Mark without raising her voice. Hale studied her and saw two things at once: cost and opportunity. He saw the clock, he saw the risk of losing a deal worth hundreds of millions. Put it in writing. Elena said before he could speak. Your offer. Your salary for the day. My continued employment regardless of outcome. A confidentiality clause that protects my mother's privacy. And return my pen. All eyes turned to Mark. He removed the jade pen from his jacket. He set it on the table with care that felt false. Hale nodded to his assistant. Draw up the agreement. Give her what she needs. The pen's weight settled into Elena's hand like a pulse returning. 18 hours remained to finish the work. 36 hours until eviction. 2 clocks, 1 life. She walked to a small conference room and closed the door. She placed the proposal on the table. She opened a fresh document and began to type. The jade pen lay beside her hand like an old friend standing guard. Sentences formed with clean edges. Technical phrases clicked into place. Cultural nuance shaped the tone with respect and precision. This was the work she was born to do. This was the bridge she had been taught to build. At 3 a.m, words began to swim. Her vision burned. She had reached 85%. She had flagged each section where Mark's version had twisted, meaning she had found truth in the space between extremes. The workforce cuts were not required. They were framed as a path with incentives. There were provisions for retraining. If the client pushed for it, her neighbor texted from the hospital, "Your mother has to stay another day." They want a deposit to keep her in care. 30 hours until eviction. 6 hours until the translation deadline. A small surge of hope rose in her chest. The money would cover the deposit. The money would stop the eviction. The money would buy time. She rested her forehead on her arms for a moment. Heat reached her wrist. Coffee rolled like a dark wave across the desk and into her open laptop. A voice floated above her. Oh no. So clumsy of me. Mark held an empty cup and a polite smile. He watched the screen flicker and die. He spoke softly so the cameras would see calm. Do not worry. I moved your files to my secure drive for protection. There was a technical issue. Corruption happens. Such a shame. He walked out before she could stand. His words trailed behind him like oil on water. 4 hours before the deadline. Pages soaked, laptop dead, backup gone. Her landlord called next. The eviction team would arrive early. Tomorrow morning. Legal had approved acceleration due to repeated late payments. Walls closed in from every side. Her mother needed care. Her home needed payment. Her work had been sabotaged. 3 hours of translation, lost to a spill. That was no accident. She thought about quitting. She thought about walking away and finding a place where the cruel math could not find her. Then the hospital called. Her mother's condition had worsened. They needed authorization for more treatment. Elena pulled the surviving pages into a new stack. She picked up the jade pen she began to rebuild from memory. She wrote until her hand cramped. She wrote until the sky turned gray. The clock on the wall crawled toward 9. Richard Hale walked in with Mark at his shoulder. He took in the stained papers and the dead laptop, with a look that mixed disappointment and satisfaction. "I expected this," he said. "People should stay in their lanes, housekeepers clean, executives lead. That is how order works. Draft the termination notice." He told his assistant, "She accessed confidential material without proper authorization. Delivery was a condition of the agreement. She failed to deliver. Call a translation agency." He said to Mark, "We will ask Joaquin for an extension." Elena felt the floor tilt. Her chance was dying in front of her. Her mother's care hung on a thread. Her home stood on the edge of a lock. Then she saw the spine of a small notebook inside her bag, her father's journal. She had brought it as a touchstone and forgotten it under the weight of hours. "Wait," she said in a voice that did not shake. She opened the journal and turned to schematics of a chip series her father had once guided at the start of his career. The GX line thermal notes, testing thresholds, layout marks that matched references in the Joaquin proposal. "This is the foundation of their system," she said. "The details in this journal fill the gaps they assume you already understand. I can finish with precision. No agency can match." Hale paused. 10 minutes. "Prove it." Elena bent over the pages. Her father's drawings sat beside the dense lines of the proposal. The jade pen guided her through the last knots like a key turning in a familiar lock. At 8:58, she walked the translation into the boardroom where the screen for the Joaquin call glowed with a waiting icon. She set the pages on the table and stepped back. The call began. A face appeared on the display. The CEO of Joaquin looked composed and unreadable. Beside him sat a man Elena recognized from a single photograph on her father's desk. "Mr. Zhang, an old colleague. A steady friend. We prefer that Ms. Cruz remain in the room," Mr. Zhang said in Mandarin. Hale looked from the screen to Elena. He understood none of the words. He understood power when he heard it. The ground in the room shifted, not much enough to feel under every shoe. The call connected. A pale blue light washed over the boardroom screen. 2 faces appeared. The CEO of Joaquin sat centered and calm. Beside him was a man Elena knew from a single old photo on her father's desk. Mr. Zhang. A steady presence then. A steady presence now. Mr. Zhang spoke first in Mandarin. His voice was gentle. "We would like Ms. Cruz to remain in the room." Elena answered in the same language with clear tones. "Thank you. I am here." Richard Hale cut. "In what did he say?" "They want me to stay," Elena replied. "They wish to speak with me directly." Hale nodded. "Once. Stay. Translate." The Joaquin CEO addressed Elena in Mandarin. "We sent a complex proposal for a reason. The terminology is precise. The structure is deliberate. We wanted to know if Hale Technologies still understands the foundation of this work." Elena translated for the room. Then she turned back to the screen. "I have reviewed your document. Your thermal modeling references align with the GX notes my father once maintained. Your usage is consistent. Your tolerances exceed industry average. Your quality controls are strict." Mr. Zhang's expression warmed. "Your father taught us the value of accuracy. He also taught us to test character." And paused. "Tell me how Hale interpreted the workforce section." Elena chose her words with care. She spoke Mandarin to the screen. She spoke English to the table. Joaquin asked for flexibility with staffing during ramp-up. That language can be read 2 ways. It can support retraining and phased scheduling, or it can justify mass layoffs. She faced Hale. "Your current interpretation assumes cuts, 320 jobs at the Newark plant. That reading risks your labor agreements and invites regulatory review." The room stirred. Mark Ellison lifted a hand. He kept his voice smooth. "Our analysis reflects market realities. Our choice of wording is appropriate. Our partner will accept it." Elena did not look away from him. Your analysis hides risk. Your version turns optional steps into mandates. Your file history shows edits that remove quality language. I have printed copies of those edits. She set 3 pages on the table. Timestamps. File names. Redlined changes. Hale's jaw tightened. How did you access these during my lunch break? Elena said I used an open workstation. While Mr. Ellison presented on another floor, I read what he wrote. I preserved what he changed. Mark laughed once without humor. Accusations from a cleaner. Convenient. Elena reached into her bag. She placed a small drive beside the papers. There is also camera footage from the break room recorded by facilities. It shows you pouring coffee on my laptop at 3:12 in the morning. It shows you leaving with a drive you claimed held. My backup facilities shared it because the spill damaged company. Property silence settled like a weight. Hale looked to his security chief. The chief tapped his tablet. He nodded, confirmed. Hale turned to Mark. His voice dropped a level. You are done here. Security will escort you out. Legal will review your conduct. 2 guards stepped forward. Mark said nothing now. He set his badge on the table. He walked to the door without looking back. The latch clicked. The air changed. Elena faced the screen again. She spoke to Joaquin in Mandarin. I apologize for the disruption. The translation you have before you reflects your intent and your standards. It also reflects a path that protects our workers while meeting your timeline. The Joaquin CEO listened without expression. Then he shifted his gaze to Richard Hale and spoke in careful English. We will proceed if 2 conditions are met. First, Ms. Cruz will serve as cultural and technical liaison during implementation. Second, Hale Technologies will commit in writing to retraining in Newark, rather than layoffs during the first phase. Hale measured the numbers behind the words. He glanced at the clock. He ran the math of delay and loss. He looked at Elena. Can you deliver the liaison role while finishing your translation? Now yes, Elena said, I will need access and authority to carry it out. You have both. Hale turned back to the screen. We accept your conditions. Draft the side letter. We will sign before close of business. Mr. Chang spoke softly in Mandarin. Your father would be proud of the way you stand in a hard place and make a bridge. Elena felt the words land. She answered with a small bow of her head. The call closed with formal thanks and a schedule for the pilot. The screen went dark. The room breathed. Hale faced Elena. His tone had shifted, but not his nature. You won this room with skill. You saved a contract I could not afford to lose. Our agreement stands. He signed the payment order for his full-day salary. 30,000 wired by end of day. He signed her employment protection with confidentiality terms for her mother. He signed the liaison appointment with immediate effect. Elena slid the documents into a folder with steady hands. Relief moved through her like warm air after a storm. But the storm outside the building was not done. Her phone buzzed. A text from the hospital deposit due within 2 hours to keep her mother in care. A call from the building office followed. Eviction team scheduled for the morning arrival window earlier than planned. She stepped out into the hall and made 2 calls. The hospital first wire on the way. Hold her mother's room, then the landlord funds are coming today. Place a temporary hold on the order. Confirm, in writing. She returned to the conference room. Hale was already speaking to legal and operations about retraining at Newark. The decision had started a chain that would move every part of the company. Elena picked up the jade pen. Its weight felt different now. Not heavier, truer. This was not the end of the climb. It was the ledge between cliffs. She still had to rebuild the sections lost to the coffee. She still had to get the payment confirmed. She still had to stop a lock from turning on her. Front door part 5 begins with the clock running again. Wires in motion, contracts in draft, a hospital waiting for proof, and a front door that must remain hers. The room emptied. Legal hurried to draft the side letter for Newark. Operation started. A retraining plan. Finance called to confirm the payment route. Elena stayed in the small conference room with the door half open. She spread her stained pages on the table and rebuilt the lost passages line by line. Her father's journal sat at her elbow like a compass. Every mark she made closed a gap. Every sentence brought the contract closer to truth. A finance manager stepped in with a cautious tone. Wire or H-wire? Today Elena answered without lifting her eyes. Act posts tomorrow at best, wire posts within hours. She said, the hospital will not wait. My landlord will not wait. Richard Hale walked past the doorway and heard the last line. Wire it, he said without slowing. Personal bonus code. Process now. The manager nodded and vanished. Within minutes, Elena's phone buzzed with a bank alert: incoming transfer pending. Amount 30,000. Pending, did not pay a deposit. Posted, did, she wrote faster. Legal arrived with the Newark side letter in draft. Language was stiff and cold. Elena, read it, and shook her head. Add bilingual training materials for every shift. Add paid class time. Add a commitment to redeploy before any reduction. Add quarterly reporting with worker feedback. Legal resisted. Hale did not. Do it. He said, we already agreed to retraining. Make it real. Elena finished the reconstructed sections. She checked every figure, she smoothed every tense. She aligned every technical phrase with the journal and with Joaquin's standards. Then she sent the final translation, to legal and to Hale. She sent a courtesy copy to Mr. Zhang with a short note in Mandarin. Thank you for testing us, here is the work as it should be. Her phone rang. The hospital accounting office. We see an incoming wire notice. Not cleared yet. Can you provide written confirmation? Yes. Elena forwarded the finance email and asked them to hold her mother's room. 5 minutes later, a nurse texted from the floor. We got the hold, your mother is resting. The landlord's office called next. A clerk with a clipped voice read from a script. Eviction processing is scheduled for the morning. Funds must clear before we halt. Elena sent the signed payment order and the bank notice. She added a copy of the new employment agreement. She kept her voice level. Confirm. A temporary hold in writing. I will bring a cashier's receipt the moment the wire posts. There was a pause on the line. The clerk sighed. I will mark a 4-hour hold starting now. Bring proof before noon. An email chimed in the corner of her screen. Subject: consultancy honorarium. From Joaquin Microsystems. Elena opened it. The message was brief and formal. Joaquin valued her role in restoring accuracy. They wished to designate a $50,000 cultural consultancy honorarium to Elena Cruz. Personally, payment upon countersignature funds restricted to professional services rendered by her during implementation. She read the line twice, then a third time. Not because she doubted the words, because the meaning landed like a door swinging open after years of pushing. She walked to finance with the email on her phone. The manager read it and blinked. We will set you up as a vendor, he said. Compliance will need a form. We can receive same day if Joaquin wires before close. Elena completed the form with steady hands. She listed languages. She listed the Newark liaison scope. She signed her name and felt the pen anchor. The Page facilities sent the video files to legal security. Filed the report. A short internal memo followed. Tampering and sabotage will result in immediate termination. Cameras and logs all retained. The house began to clean itself from the inside. By early afternoon, the first wire posted. Her bank alert arrived with a clear number. Funds available. Elena paid the hospital. Deposit from her phone. She walked the landlord's cashier's receipt to the building office in person. The clerk stamped a halt notice and slid it across the counter without looking up. Policy changed with proof, not with stories. On her way back to Hale Technologies, a message came from Mr. Zhang. Your additions for Newark show respect. Please add a training exchange. 2 technicians from Joaquin will visit Newark for 2 weeks. 2 Newark techs will visit Shanghai for 2 weeks. Shared craft. Builds trust. Elena smiled in spite of the long night. Approved. She replied in Mandarin and in English. Back in the building, she stepped into the boardroom again. Hale was on the phone with investors. He ended the call when he saw her. Newark letter signed. He said legal is filing with the union and the state training begins next month. We will need a plan by Friday. You will have it, Elena answered. It will be clear. It will be fair. Her phone buzzed again. Joaquin's honorarium wire had posted. A second alert lit the screen. two numbers side by side. Together they formed breathing room where there had only been cliff edges. She sent a final transfer to the landlord's account. She forwarded the hospital a second confirmation to cover coming tests. Then she took the elevator down and stepped into the late afternoon sun. The city moved around her with the usual indifference. Cars pressed forward. People crossed against the light. A delivery bike rattled by with a loose chain. Elena stood still, for one long breath, then another. She took a bus to the hospital and walked down a sterile hall that smelled of chlorine and citrus. Her mother was awake. A nurse had tidied the blankets. The beeping was steady and slow. Elena set the jade pen on the bedside table and took her mother's hand. Li Mei looked from the pen to her daughter's face. Her voice was thin but sure. "Your father told me you would carry this when the day arrived. He said you would know what to do with it." Elena laughed once. The kind of laugh that shakes loose a tight chest. "I only tried to do the next right thing. One page at a time. One call at a time." Li Mei squeezed her hand. "That is how bridges are built." They sat without words for a while. The kind of silence that feeds people instead of starving them. When Elena stood to leave, her mother touched the pen again. "Keep it near. It knows the way." Evening rolled in as Elena returned to Hale Technologies to close the loop. She met with legal to finalize the translation package. She met with operations to outline retraining for Newark. She met with finance to confirm that payroll would update her status in the morning. On her desk in the small conference room, she found a single folded note. No signature. 2 sentences. "You change the temperature of this whole floor. Do not let it cool." She did not need a name to recognize the handwriting. It belonged to a junior analyst who had once lowered her voice when speaking to executives. It belonged to someone who had seen a door open and wanted it to stay open. Elena carried the note with the journal and the pen. 3 small objects. One clear path night settled on the glass tower inside. Printers hummed and then went quiet. The cleaning crew rolled carts down long halls. They nodded to Elena. Not because she wore a uniform, because they knew she saw them. Morning would bring the first planning meeting for Newark. Morning would bring the first draft of a broader idea. If the company could miss a translator in its own halls for 5 years, what else had it missed? Part 6 begins with a new title on a new door. 6 months of hard work. Numbers that can stand in any boardroom and a program that turns hidden skill into open power.